Welcome to the Vinyl Collective, your weekly journal of the hip hop and R&B landscape. I'm your host, John.
And I'm your co-host, Toffer. Welcome.
Welcome.
Episode 24. RIP Kobe Bryant. Shout out to you.
Yeah.
Obviously, one thing about Kobe Bryant, right? He was a very arrogant man. Like, he had that Mamba mentality, which obviously has, permeated society, especially like not even just basketball fans, just people who are just fans of, famous people or whatever, or like motivational quotes, all those shit you see in like reels and stuff like that.
Mm.
And, I'm not gonna lie, I think, in some sense, John, we kind of adopt that, don't we? Like I think you mentioned it at the end of last week's episode. You were like, do you think we're getting a bit arrogant? I was like, well, fuck yeah. Like, what do you mean? Like, I mean, at some point, especially when you're putting out ideas that you feel are like original and they kind of deviate against the norm. I think because a lot of people, when you do that, right, it's like a form of cognitive dissonance just happens, right? Where they're just like, shit, this person's actually giving like a logical opinion about something, but it doesn't agree with what I've believed for like the past maybe 5-10 years. And that makes me feel, not good. So I'm just going to call that arrogance, or he doesn't know what he's talking about.
Well, there's definitely... No, it's true. I think there's definitely like an element of that about anything you do and you take it completely seriously. Especially with like whether it's music or film criticism, there's always going to be an element of arrogance or like pretentiousness, or because we're putting our views out and we're going, we think we know what we're talking about.
Yeah,
and
so, yeah, especially the thing is,
there's going to be an element of that.
And the thing is, the people who you consider good are the ones with polarizing opinions. No one really gives a fuck about the opinion that agrees with everyone every fucking time. Do you know what I mean? Because everyone knows that's not realistic. And even if you were one of those people and you were successful in it, you're not going to be remembered. I'm not saying that, I'm trying to be etched in history, but I'm just saying in terms of discussion, maybe people want to hear us more so than other people, maybe because we do give that, different opinion.
That unfiltered.
Yeah, just instead of just being like, it's not that we're saying that we think popular artists are shit. Some popular artists are great, but not every artist that people put on this pedestal are amazing. And people might think everything about streaming is great, right? And then we're gonna be like, hey, actually, there are some stuff that you need to kind of consider. And I think, I don't know the word arrogance. I think it's just like when you believe in an opinion and when you thought about an opinion for so long, right? And then you kind of had like a model where you see things, right? And then because you believe in it, you're not saying that it's God's given truth, but because you believe in it, you say it with a sense of authority. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that may come off as arrogance. It's just a little explanation, but I don't give a fuck. Anyways, welcome to the Vinyl Collective. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Yeah. Been I think, as some viewers will know now, I've been following Tope's journey with new albums very, very closely. You thought you were going to get away with it this week. You're not.
Go. All right,
so yeah, Tope, I feel like he's been disappointing some people a little bit with his album reviews. He's taking a lot of these, some people consider them classics. These great albums. I think so. I think some people consider them classics.
I'll tell you which ones.
And then kind of, letting everyone down slowly.
What albums are you thinking
of? What comes to the top of my head? I think a lot of people would be like, the Internet Ego Death is like, maybe not classic level, but they would consider it like one of the solid kind of indie R&B projects from 2010s.
Really?
I reckon so. Yeah.
Fuck me.
I mean, when I listened to it for the first time, I was like, whoa, this is sick.
I
fully,
get it.
Fully. 2015, I think it was.
Yeah, it came out in 2015.
Yeah.
And
I was like all over the Ego Death.
I mean, most people were. People were riding those nuts, mate. Like, you could not get away with them because it's like all the people who were like in the Odd Future era and when Obey Hats kind of grew up, and then Ego Death was one of the things that came out whilst they're in uni. Yeah. So I could not get away from people mentioning this album, especially like the hipsters, right? They love this shit. So again, I think I've mentioned it plenty of times on the episode. Like when that album's overhyped, I just kind of shut off. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to get to that now because I'm not going to be able to look at this in a way that I'd want to see it because public opinion is just flooding my brain right now. So after a while, I just never got to it. And obviously they dropped Hive Mind, I think couple
Yeah.
of years ago. Can't remember now. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, it's been some years now. Like, let me look back at Ego Death. I haven't actually touched Hive Mind much, so I was like, let me check out Ego Death. This is meant to be the one. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, I mean,
It's one of those ones that just doesn't age brilliantly.
I think it's just a vibe. And bear in mind, 2015, I don't think Tiny Desk concerts existed in 2015. So this was like the original Tiny Desk, right? Everyone's, some people, you got the guy on like guitar strumming it out, the guy on drums, and it's just like a really chill session.
Atmosphere.
Do you know what I mean? And people like that. But then obviously Tiny Desk came, you're like, fuck, everyone does that. Or everyone can do that. There's nothing special about that. And it's like, boy, I got to listen to Sid kind of like in this mellow voice for an hour. Like, I don't want to do that. Like, even, it's funny, I actually like Sid's solo project, Finn. Like, I actually like that one way more because I feel like the production, I feel like the production behind her is way, because the thing is with someone like Sid, right, she's very much like, cool, take your girl, like she's very calm like that. So it's like, to make the song interesting, you can't just have some mellow ass like production the whole way through. You gotta have something that's a bit more to the forefront, and I think that's what Finn does more.
I get what you're saying about that. I think the most famous track was the one that Kate Renata produced anyway, wasn't it? Girl.
Oh, that's the worst song for me.
What?
I really dislike
Talk to me about that. What?
I think that song is way too long. I think that song is
It's very long, but it's a nice vibe.
That's what I'm saying. It's a vibe.
There's nothing wrong with that.
No, there's nothing wrong with that. But if I'm judging the music, right, and I'm like, okay, do I really need like someone, especially the second half, where I think they're just repeating like a chord, like a hook, just over and over again. I'm like, it's like 3 minutes. Like, what the fuck? Like, I'm getting, like, it's not like the beat progresses or anything gets more interesting. It's just the same for like 3 minutes. Or like,
and then there's like a bridge at maybe 4 minutes in, and it takes you on to like another minute and a half.
Yeah, right? And it's like, no, man.
I'm gonna stand by the track though.
I mean, don't worry, everyone can have their own opinion, but that song in particular was like my least favorite. Honestly, like I probably did not like that one. What other albums have I done that people just didn't like? I'm trying to think now. I'm looking through my list. I mean, I liked quite a few of them. I forgot to mention, right? Fucking hell. So, Xavier Over, right? His second album, If You Feel,
this is classic.
Man. But I guess if you don't follow my Instagram or Twitter, right? I didn't even post on Twitter, anyways. But I was just driving. I was driving to the park on Saturday, and then obviously, I get a notification. Also, my watch gets it first, so I looked at my watch and it just said, "If You Feel," right, out now. Like, and I was like, oh, I already knew. I didn't even have to see the rest. I was like, oh no. I was like, here we go. But obviously, I mean, if you liked my first tweet about it when I was just like, I really like Blind Man, and I expected to come into this, and I was disappointed. And then after then there was like a 5-minute delay. He likes all the other tweets.
That's funny.
To me, it was like, one, it's just funny, innit? Like that you saw that, because one thing I haven't done with any of the artists, whether I like them or dislike them, I haven't tagged them. Yeah, I haven't tagged them because it's not for them. It's not your fucking business. I'm doing it for myself. And two, if you go out your way to search yourself, but that says a lot about you. That gives me a lot that I need to know, right? Because you have to go out of your way to find this. And again, and just the last one, because I know a lot of people do this, and I'm going to keep saying this. If you are too scared to critique an artist because you're like, oh, but, I want to work for this person one day, I want to interview this person, then don't come to me, mate. Because I don't care if it's Kendrick Lamar. I don't give a fuck if it's Xavier Omar. I don't care. If you drop something, I do not.
That's because Kendrick Lamar's never coming on it.
No, but the thing is, I don't like every Kendrick Lamar.
No, I get.
I mean, that's and I think if the requirement for an artist to actually engage with you is I have to worship the ground you walk on, then I don't want to deal with that. The only barefoot thing I endorse is the wine. Like, I'm not doing that. Like, I'm just not doing that. Like, I'm like, it's just, so I just thought it was funny. I didn't really think anything of it. I didn't for once think, oh, let me like delete or like go backtrack. I'm like, no, it's what I think. Funny. It's still what I think.
It reminds me, I love it when that happens though. I think it was maybe the end of school or like first year of uni or something. There was a specific DJ that was gonna I think it was either play either our like sixth form end of term ball or like our end of term first year uni ball. It was like a specific DJ, and I tweeted about it, like obviously added to that, and it was like, I'm not paying like £20 to see this guy. And he just and then a notification pops up and it's like, so and so's liked your tweet.
Ah, gosh. Did he say anything after that?
No, it's like, I don't. It's just funny because I wonder what's going through their head. Are they like, this is funny,
Oh,
or
fuck that
I'm
guy.
doing this as like, I hope he
Yeah, I
gets
hope
the
you die.
passive aggressive nature of
Yeah.
this.
I hope you die, and I hope you cross paths because I'm gonna cut you out. Like, I feel like it's either one or the other. Innit? Like, some people are like good sports, right, and they understand. Like, same way if someone said, I actually didn't care for this episode. I actually didn't care for last
Yeah.
episode. The thing is, that doesn't pay me no mind because I don't do it to make other people happy. I do it because I enjoy making shows with John. Like, this is how I see it. So I think good artists will just kind of like, take it as it is. I think Anthony Fantano, I think he's quite famous for like criticizing Logic like heavy. And obviously he did an interview with Logic and it was like pure good vibes. But I think even Logic understands like it's not about that good music isn't about everyone liking it. It's about enough people.
It's like Charlemagne the God with Post Malone.
Yeah.
That's an awkward hour.
Yeah, I mean, he even did it with I don't know if you've seen the video of him when Lakeith Stanfield did like a little rap for him. Yeah, and obviously he's holding on to that to this day.
Nah,
but the thing is, if we're being honest, the best way to get back at Charlemagne is just become, a competent rapper and become one that's actually bookable and biddable. And it's like, actually, he was wrong because not every critic's gonna get it right. But it's like prove them wrong. Then, like, if A2, for example, is really the shit, then let A2 drop something that's critically acclaimed. I have to be like, oh, actually, maybe I was wrong. Like, opinions can change. Like, everything is dynamic. Do you know what I mean? But at that time, it's like, I think if you judge music at a point, like a review is at a point in time. So it's not like I'm not gonna be like, oh, well, I've got to wait till 5 years because these events might happen which may inform my decision about an album that came out 5 years ago. It's like, no, if that happens, then I'll just do another review. Like, you can do more than one review about an album. So that's just kind of way I see it, to be honest. But I'm still having good fun. I'm on the last week and a half or so it's getting close.
And then rumor has it that at the end of March, Toppy's passing the baton onto his co-host John, and I'm doing the long month of April. That's the same as
stay tuned for that.
Yeah.
I mean,
how many days in March was it? 31.
31, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm doing 31 days. You're doing a day less. So I'm actually finishing on the 1st of April because I have to take a day out. Whatever shit happens.
I need to perfect my list.
Yeah. No, you should perfect your list. But whilst you're doing that, we're going to give you a quick update of what's going on this week. So as we mentioned last week, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think when we were talking hella shit on like UK rappers, and we're like, it doesn't make any fucking sense that Millions doesn't have an album. And on that same day, I think it was literally the day we released the fucking episode, Millions announces a new track with Lotto Ash, I think it is. Let me just double check that because I didn't get it wrong. Is it Lotto Ash? Yeah, Lotto Ash, yeah. I don't listen to him too much. I was like, yeah, how fucking convenient that is. And it like literally right after we're like, it doesn't make any financial sense for him to drop an album. And obviously
when you messaged me, I was like about it. I didn't even read it properly. I was like searching him up. I was like, I bet he's like announced his debut album. He's like,
that would have been funny. Like, that would have been like, oh, yeah, no, that's awkward. Do you know what I mean? But no, it's literally just another single. Have you heard it?
No.
Okay. It's all right. I don't really care for Lotto Ashes singing like that. Millions does what Million does. Obviously, the song's called How Many Times, so you can kind of guess the topics at hand. But it's okay. Nothing super to write home about. Again, I feel like because he dropped the single, it's like, okay, how many times? You should do a song talking about how many times he's gonna drop a single. Because I'm gonna count it now. This might be his
10.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
Stop it.
15th song where he's a feature or it's his own song.
That is a good length studio album.
Yeah. So
Stay tuned.
I don't think this formula is gonna dry up
anytime soon. No.
But yeah.
Anyway, in other music though, right? Let's move on from him.
No, okay, go on.
I was going to say, Benny the Butcher dropped a studio album.
Okay,
I think
didn't know that. Sure.
Plugs I Met 2.
Oh, damn! Did he?
Yeah, you did.
Shit.
Yeah,
I liked the first one.
Yeah, it's strong. It's got the whole like soprano
Yeah, of
going
course.
on, hasn't it? But yeah, Plug Summit 2. It's so it's basically a joint album between him and Harry Fraud,
Okay.
who I rate very highly. He did a joint album last year with Currency,
Mm-hmm.
which has some good
Yes.
tracks on it. But yeah, I've listened to most of it. It's 28 minutes, 9 tracks, so it's short.
Yeah, similar to the first one. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, from what I've heard a few tracks here and there. Is good. Yeah.
Okay.
I
Okay.
mean, I always enjoy Bernie the Butcher. So
I mean, who doesn't, right? I mean, I think I like. I don't know. It's out of Plugs I Met and obviously Burden of Proof. I think I like the Plugs I Met more because again, the features on that as well. Oh, Black Thought, Push the T is like Jesus Christ. Like, yeah, that even though it's like 20, it's like I think it's no more than 25 minutes. The first one, I think.
yeah,
And it's
24 minutes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And it's like. It just goes
that
so
song
hard.
18 Wheeler.
Yeah, even the end 50-50 when that goes in the interview, it's like,
so succinct.
Yeah, it's so succinct. It's just it does feel like, one of those like Soprano-esque like films. So yeah. I'm excited to listen to this. I'll probably listen to this after my 31-day challenge. Obviously, that's been taking most of my time.
All those songs I randomly send you, and you're like, no, John, I'm busy listening to this album. Come back to me in April.
No, because the thing is, right, like I said, if I'm going to do this challenge, right, I want to do it right. Like, I know some people listen to an album once and I'll give you the review. I was like, and I'll give it to you in one tweet. I was like, you know what? Let me do it my own fucking way. I'm not going to make one tweet. I'm going to make as many tweets as I want. And I'm going to listen to each album more than once. Definitely more than twice, I'll tell you that. So, I try to be very, like, conscious when listening to, like, each album each day because I want to give obviously you only have one day to soak in an album worth of information. That's not easy. So I try to, and also you're not going to get all of it. You're not going to get the whole album idea out in tweets, but I want to be as accurate as I can. So sometimes other music, especially when it's like an album, like, you know what, I'll do this later because I can only take it one album, especially outside of like the artist spotlight as well, which we'll get to in a bit. But like it's like artist spotlight, the album of the day, like I don't have much with anything else because obviously I want to like listen to other stuff like podcasts and chill and live my fucking life, don't I? But and other news, actually, one more thing I'm gonna bring up, right? So one guy that I've touted very highly, I don't know if I mentioned on the podcast, obviously AJ Tracey, his debut album, AJ Tracey, came out in 2019. I liked it so much. I said it was better than Psychodrama. I said that, it's on record. You can search up that tweet. So it's better than Psychodrama. Big fan of AJ Tracey. So now he's releasing his follow-up to that, called Flu Game. And I'm like, ain't that title just a little bit close to home? Like, ain't it just a little bit like, but whatever, innit? Whatever. We're gonna forget the year we had. So he's got this album Flu Game. Obviously, he's in the cover now. He's in a basketball. He's basically in a basketball jersey. He's in the bleachers with a basketball. He's just sitting on the floor as if he's won a championship. And there's nothing wrong with that. Cover looks kind of cool. But then I saw the features, right? And I get emails from AJ Tracey, like not him personally, but like in terms of like updates. Don't ask me why I have those. But so it features Nav, your boy. I know everyone knows.
Oh no, this is gonna be.
It gets more interesting from there. Nav, T-Pain, Kalani, obviously Mabel from West 10, Digger D from Bringing It Back, and Mo Stack. So, just given that track list, John, obviously I know you're not the biggest fan of AJ Tracey, but just the combination of those sounds, what at least the T-Pain and Nav song, what do you think is going on here?
I'm not sure. I don't know. I will put it out there as in not the biggest fan in the sense of I don't listen to him that much. Not that I listen and go, this is awful.
Yeah.
So it's 16 tracks.
That too.
That's quite long.
Yeah.
We already talked briefly a few weeks ago about the Digger D song, didn't we?
Yeah.
Like it felt a bit. Yeah, it was alright, but I don't know. There's a lot of different sounds on this album, isn't there?
I mean, definitely. We haven't heard a single note, and you already know this album's gonna be all over the fucking place. So I'm kind of anxious for this. I definitely don't think it's gonna be good.
You can kind of predict what kind of song that's gonna be.
No, West 10's already been out for like a year now.
Has it?
So, yeah, it's okay.
How much I know about him.
Yeah, no, it's a good song. It's a decent song, but
is it what I'm predicting in my head?
No, I don't think so. It's more like a throwback garage type of sound.
Yeah,
Oh, is it really? Okay, fair
that's
enough.
what I think.
Yeah, fair
Yeah,
enough. Fair enough then. So yeah, yeah, this sounds like it's gonna be all over the place. I don't know how the fuck it's gonna work with T-Pain. I feel like he's gonna do that singing shit again, which I just did not like on his first album. So but this is the thing. I mean, he said he feels like he's one of the most versatile artists in the UK, and I feel like you don't have to prove that to anyone. Like, just working. That's why I feel people think that being good at anything in any field means that you are good at everything in that field. When it's probably a lot more beneficial to be a specialist in that field. Like, you don't have to know everything about basketball. If you're really good at defense, people will hire you for defense. Like, I don't know why people haven't got
we
that
were
concept
literally
yet.
laughing about this the other day, weren't we? Because I made a comment about a particular artist, and I was like, just because they do lots of different things doesn't mean they're versatile. Like, literally, this conversation, I was like, just because so and so's done this kind of song doesn't mean they're versatile. You have to actually succeed at it.
Yeah,
Like,
it's true.
that's
Oh
what we were
yeah,
talking about in
sorry.
our Untitled Unmastered one. I was like, here's Kendrick Lamar doing Drake-esque flows, and he's actually mastering it, so he can
Yeah.
call himself versatile. But
Yeah.
you know,
Actually, speaking of which, did you hear that leak with him and Baby Keem? That song, that Kendrick Lamar song. Have you heard it?
I think, what was it called?
It's called Vent.
I saw. Was it
Vent
on
or something?
Twitter?
Yeah, it's on YouTube as well. It's been kind of all over the place.
I
Very
think I
very
heard a
rock.
clip. I heard a clip from it. Yeah.
Yeah, very rock inspired indeed.
Yeah.
Sounds weird. It sounds weird. I
Mm.
don't know, but oh, this album's gonna be different, man. I tell you that for sure. I think Baby Keem's gonna be all over this, which again I'm not against. I think he's cool. But yeah, definitely departing from any sort of jazz or
For sure.
modern day sound. So yeah.
Yeah. And quickly before we get on to the Spotlight series, many people listening to this will probably maybe have seen, if they follow similar people to us on social media. Someone had the audacity on social media to say that the best album of 2020 was Lil Baby, which there's a lot that could be said about that. Said across all genres, it's the best album of 2020. And I think I tweeted shortly after. I know you said you had some feelings about it. If you're the kind of person who listens to Lil Baby enough to be like, this is quality music, the vast majority of the people doing that probably don't listen to a lot of genres. And I know there are people that rate him very highly that do, but just the vast majority of people I've come across.
Do you know what it is? Oh, poor guy, innit? Like,
he's been thrown under the bus.
He's been absolutely cooked. Like a slow cook, like
Brisket.
Yeah, like a brisket, like slow cooked for many hours. Like, this guy's been getting roasted. Even though, don't get me wrong, I roasted him as well with it. But one thing I did not say though, John, was that I didn't say he was wrong. I just said this is what happens when you have Morty's level music taste. Because you just think, again, if you eat Morty's every day and if someone gives you GBK, you're gonna be like, oh my gosh, like, what the, this is the best burger I've had in my life. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, that's what's gonna happen. I think, okay, he's not the only person to do this. I'll say this. I think what happens is, again, this is why I think numbers are shit metric in terms of judging how good an artist is. Because obviously, when you look at Lil Baby is one of the biggest rappers in the world right now. That's fair. So obviously, in my brain, I'm like, Lil Baby is one of the biggest rappers in the world. Rap is one of the biggest genres in the world. So if he has the best album and it's the most popular genre, then surely it's the best album across all genres. That makes sense. Logic tight. But it's like, no, that actually doesn't make sense. But a lot of people do that. Like, for example, Beyonce drops a great album. They'll say it's album of the year because Beyonce is very famous. So you see the outreach is very clear, but that doesn't mean it's the best. It just means it's got to the most people. So you kind of assume, okay, because I haven't heard anything from other genres, and the Lil Baby one's the best one I've heard, it has to be the best across all genres, because it's like, if A is bigger than B, and B, so if A is bigger than B, and C is bigger
Go
than
on, tell him.
A. No, okay, I'll do it another way. Fuck this. If A is smaller than B, which is smaller than C, then obviously A is smaller than C. So that's just logic, right? It's just that transient property.
You did maths at uni, right?
Yeah, I did.
Shout out
Shut,
Topic.
shut the fuck up. So yeah, people are very transient with like their logic, and so it's like, oh, if if A implies B and B implies C, that means A implies C. And it's like that you can't
Yeah.
do that with music. It's like there are other genres, there's other metrics to use. It's not just how popular you are. And that's why I hate bringing that into conversation, because yes, a song having big numbers is a factor. It's just a factor. It's not the only one, and it's not the be or end all. Same way, it's not like, oh, if someone has this many rings, that means they're the best player in their sport. It's like, no, there's no one's gonna say fucking Bill Russell's the best basketball player of all time. No, just because he has 11 rings. Yeah, like no one's gonna do that, right? So it's like it's just it's a conversation starter, but if you end it there, then it's like it's useless in it. So that guy, I think he got in the moment in it. You can tell he's a big little baby fan. He got in the moment. He's like, oh, I'm gonna
tell him. I'm gonna tell him.
Yeah, I'm gonna tell him. It's like, oh man, like you were bit, you had too much ship in your dip there, mate. But yeah, I mean, he thinks what he thinks, so that he thinks what he thinks.
Yeah. But yeah, let's talk about our Spotlight series.
Yes.
Our artist this week was Lingo. Tope, you introduced me to him, didn't you?
Yeah.
But yeah, great artist. Kind of had 2 EPs, which he then kind of followed up, obviously last year, with his studio album. Yeah, I guess I've read a lot of high praise of him. People saying like the political themes and kind of messages in his album. He's like the UK Kendrick Lamar.
Okay.
Which I mean, obviously not necessarily saying that in terms of like lyrical ability, but no, I said I didn't say that. I've read this in articles, which you can kind of see when there's like a UK rapper who's written a whole album, looking at the kind of landscape around him and his generation and kind of the effects of we talked about on social media when we posted, of like drugs and like violence, racism, how all of those kind of things affects his generation because of the actions of a generation before him. So there's definitely like a depth to the album, which is quite special.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah, obviously in terms of like the soundscape, it's not a jazz inspired hip hop album, but but it's good in its own right.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I think people, because Kendrick's like magnum opus is jazz inspired, I mean, people act like Good Kid, Mad City ain't like full of trap beats. Neither is Damn. Like, Kendrick Lamar, he's known for the gangster sound as well. But I put Che Lingo on the list for a while now. I think the song I heard was Dark Days, obviously. Great song with Koji Radical, obviously a Vinyl Collective favorite over here. But I don't know, there's definitely something to him. Like, he has like you can tell he's one of those guys who's like, he definitely grew up listening to like Dizzy Rascal, but he also grew up listening to like Jay-Z and Nas and all of that stuff. And it's kind of, you can see he's brought the two together because the way he kind of like changes flows and tones, it's very similar to what Kendrick does. And I do get the Kendrick comparison in that mannerism, and obviously the way his accent is, or kind of like the aggressive kind of, I don't know if you call it staccato kind of flow. It's like very similar to like Slow Tie. It's like very, very similar, especially on like My Block and stuff like that. So I think he's definitely, I mean, there's nothing wrong wearing your influences on your sleeve, but he's doing it well. So yeah, no, I think it makes for really good songs. Obviously he kind of came to most people's radar. I think when he dropped his what's the name of that? Sensitive, which has some good songs. It's definitely more like, not for the ladies, but it's more accessible. And I think this one, he was just trying to tell like his own story, which is, being from Wandsworth, which I guess obviously nowadays it's like, oh, Wandsworth, like, oh, it's a really nice place. But obviously, Southside Shopping Centre, like all that good stuff. Like, but obviously back in the day, Wandsworth was like, whew, like, you know what I mean? Like, I saw the news quite a lot, like on Crime Watch and shit like that. So, yeah, you know what I mean? So, I think obviously he wants to tell that part of where he came from. And obviously I think it's really, I won't say important, but it's good to kind of hear that from places that are like long gentrified now, because people always like to forget that these things kind of existed. obviously he does a bit of singing. He is a bit of a singer as well. I can't say I'm the biggest fan of that side of him. I think he got it right on the Dark Days song. I think that was like where he should have kind of kept that.
Mm.
But in terms of just like regular singing, he does that same shit that rappers always do, where it's like it's like a bit like forlorn, and like it's just like it's not singing, but it's like you can't judge it as a singer, but it's like you're
It's
doing
like
too much.
vaguely melodic.
Yeah, like the
Talking of singers, and like since he was actually on the track Dark Days, Koji Radical does
Killed him.
well, not just on that, but I'm saying he's one of those versatile rappers that can kind of sing, like Kashmir Tears.
Yeah.
What a song.
Yeah.
And that's him like full on singing. He's not, doing the J. Cole. He's like, he's going for it.
But the thing is, if you're gonna do that, you have to hit like the right balance. Do you know what I mean? So like, obviously, you hear Che Lingo on this verse, you wouldn't even think it was him. It's like, fuck, he's rapping as well. Like, what the hell? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's such a really good balance there. But it's like, if you try to sing in every type of like, I don't know, pitch, it's like, okay, now I'm gonna get a bit tight. Should just brought a singer here. I don't get why people just don't like doing that these days. Like maybe it's like a '90s thing where it's like, oh, just put a singer on the hook. Maybe it's too predictable, but it works. If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
I really like his song with Gets, Black Ones. Really got some. Oh, Gets just goes crazy on that one.
I like Hunch quite a lot.
Yeah,
you're talking about kind of the different flows and the way he kind of like does that staccato, like high speed, slow type energy. That he does that on Hunch, and that's really, really good.
Yeah, that's when I think the clear like influence is like Kendrick Lamar, and I think obviously like we talk a lot about like him and his sound, but I think he's got a lot of promise. Like he's got a lot of promise. I'll say that. Like for someone who's still ready for up and coming, it seems like it's kind of reminds me a little bit of like Little Sims when she was coming up, where it's like the talent is there, you just need to kind of polish it out and just make it your own, and then that's when you get a great area, or that's when that's when it just starts, the waterfall just comes out and everything just starts coming through. And I think he's getting to that point where it's like, if you just kind of like put yourself more into it, then boom, it's just gonna fall out.
If Inflow gives you a DM, then answer it.
Do you know what I mean? Like if sometimes it's like, it's not about trying to do everything. Do you know what I mean? Just kind of stick to that's the thing. If you just stick to your strengths, and like, okay, yeah, you kind of have taken the Kendrick Lamar or something, but now make it Che Lingo, and if he does that, then this guy will be crazy good. Like I think the potential's there. Obviously, not all potential is realized, but if I think about a lot of rappers in the UK, I can see him competing with the best of them, 100%. 100%, like with a Nux, with a Dave, 100%. So that's how I feel.
But yeah, obviously you can find our 3 songs, which we've already mentioned them. South, My Block, and Dark Days. They're on our Spotify series playlist.
Yes.
And if you've got any suggestions for up and coming artists that you've heard of, we haven't mentioned them yet, then feel free to email us any suggestions. You can do that the finalcollectivepod@gmail.com. Forget the collective pod. You can also obviously tweet us at TVC Pod. You can message us on Instagram, respond to our stories on there at Final Collective Pod as well. But yeah, we're going to take a short break and then we will be back. Right, we are back. So usually, Tope gives us one of his elaborate analogies, but I'm gonna give you guys one today. So obviously, with this pandemic, right? Like, there's a very concrete scientific reality right in front of us, but it's not. It's pretty uncomfortable. It's pretty distressing. So it's only human nature to kind of go about it in different ways. We're obviously a bit of a diverse bunch, so we have a variety of responses to kind of the reality, right? Some of us, follow the law to a T. We're like, must stay indoors, I'm going to go to the shops late at night when it's quiet and all this kind of stuff. Others, completely ignoring it. Exact opposite. Just completely protesting against, this doesn't exist. This is, a complete falsehood, right? And then others kind of toe the line a bit, they adapt their life a little bit to kind of the reality of the virus. But at the same time, they're like, you know what? Still going to meet up with friends, still going to have a little party here and there. I deserve it. So in this way, I'm not trying to go political, right? But there are obviously a portion of society, right, that is in defiance of this like particular reality, right? They find it really uncomfortable to acknowledge. So they need some kind of other way of like convincing themselves or like understanding this reality, right? And this is where art and music comes in. So I told you it would connect.
Okay.
So
Okay.
music is obviously a performance art. Art itself is there are so many genres to it, and obviously within these art genres, you have those where people were like specifically trying to like like steer away from reality or like react against something that is a fact. And obviously that's what you get in art, like the 20th century. You kind of got like modernization coming in. You have modernism, which is just like a complete switch from realism of like the previous century. So you're no longer like, oh, I'm looking at this landscape. I've got my little canvas here. I'm going to try and do like the best replication of that scene as I can. You're kind of distorting it. You're kind of using different colors, different shapes to represent what you see, to kind of present that scene to other people in a way that is either more palatable or is kind of a way that you see it, or is a way of kind of understanding a difficult scene in a different way. And that's kind of, I guess, the topic we're going to be looking at today, which is alter egos and ways of kind of dealing with truths and realities without kind of directly confronting them. That was my segue.
Not bad. At first I was like, oh, I don't know if he has the chops to do it. And you did bring it full circle. That wasn't bad. Okay, cool. Good effort. But yeah,
I was going to go all like art imitates life, life imitates art. But I thought we leave that for another day.
But yeah, no. As John said, right, we're talking about the alter ego today, and I mean, there's so many ways you can kind of go with it, but also we'll kind of talk about alter egos in general, and then we'll kind of tie it into music and why they're used, and then we'll give you guys a few examples for you guys kind of like mull over. But yeah, I mean, let's just kick off. So when it comes to alter egos, and so many artists have done this throughout the years, where I think the degree of I won't say severity, but some people, they do alter egos like, oh, it's just a bit of fun. You still know it's me, and I feel like that's like the base level. When you get some alter egos where it's like it's so extreme, where they don't want like there's some part of it is like completely anonymous, where like people don't know who that person is. So for example, I guess at the base level, you may have someone like, let's say, Gets and Ghetto, right? That's like base level, because everyone knows that's Gets, that's Ghetto, cool, that's a thing. But then you get people like Daft Punk, where it's like no one knows who they really are. It's just Daft Punk. So it's like you got to that extreme level, it's like where it's like we don't even know who you are originally. Like, and then maybe a bit below that, you have someone like MF Doom, where we know who he is, but he portrays the Doom moniker so hard, like you don't even consider who he is in real life. So you have all these levels of the spectrum. So it's weird because obviously people have them for their own reasons, but I mean, maybe just asking you yourself, John, why do you think people take up alter egos? Why you even use them in the first place?
Well, I think as we've like kind of mentioned with the art analogy, like it's obviously not specific to music. It's not like a musical thing that's just sprung up from people in hip hop. Like, I guess navigating different like situations, whether you're at work or you're in the office or hanging out with friends, hanging out with family at Christmas. Like, there's lots of situations in which you kind of need to portray yourself in maybe like a different light, or kind of hold bits of your personality back, or act in a way that certain characteristics and stuff come to the foreground. So I think it just depends on the situation you're in, and I guess then for musicians, the kind of topics and stuff that they're trying to deal with. I guess that's how I see it. Because I think all of us are, in a sense, have lots of different alter egos probably.
I think you're right.
Have to like different hats or whatever we have to put on, or different masks, if we're using the Doom analogy, that you need to put on in different kind of settings and scenarios.
Yeah, no, you're right. I'll give two examples here, right? So, I don't know if you know, so I think it's like a modern day philosopher of sorts, Naval. So, I think a lot of people know of him. He's been on like Joe Rogan's podcast and stuff like that. And he has a quote where he says like, to society, and when I'm with my friends, I'm a liberal. But when I'm with like my family, I'm a Republican. And maybe when I'm with other people, I'm somewhere in between. And obviously some people was like, well, what are you talking about? But I think in a sense that makes sense, especially if you live with, or your parents are like first generation and stuff like that. There's gonna be some things they just, you know, don't get in the train of. You can kind of guess which ones those are. And then obviously, just the wider society, you know, everyone kind of puts on this face that we're all just trying to be the best versions of ourselves and we're all super progressive. So obviously, when you're just speaking outwards to the masses, you're not going to say anything that's a bit edgy. So you're just going to be liberal and be like, oh, fuck it, you can do whatever you want. And so that's one analogy. And then the second one is, I think it's obviously, I think it's like some sort of like anonymous or like forgotten like Japanese quote where it's like, you know, you have three faces, right? The three face theory, where it's like you have a face that, you know, you kind of put on for everyone else. Then you have your face that you have with only your close people, and then you have the face that only you yourself kind of see. And you know, it's not that none of them are real, it's just that certain ones just wouldn't work for other social settings. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, and even just kind of tie into that. So it's actually it's a thing in experimental social psychology. Is called enclosed cognition. So you can consider it's also known as the Batman effect. So obviously when Batman, you know, he doesn't feel like Batman if he's just wearing joggers and a hoodie. Like, do you know what I mean? He's not gonna feel like Bruce Wayne. But you know, once he puts on the bat suit and he's got all these little gadgets, then that's a whole different thing, right? Same way. I mean, I think they made it intentional, especially in the old school like cartoons, for like someone like Clark Kent, right? He's like some super nerdy, but you know, fucking ripped guy, but whatever. He's also a super nerdy guy, and then you know he's regular Clark Kent. But then he goes into the phone booth, and then he's Superman, right?
Yeah.
And then he can just take on the world. And there's actually a study done. So it's in a book called Journal of Experimental Social Psychology, and it was basically a study where they asked people to kind of do some sort of public speaking, and they did it twice, and they did it with two independent audiences. Where the first one was when they were talking about themselves in the first person. So you know, I Top Sadiq, da da da. No, so that's third person. But you know what I mean? Like they're talking about something in, you know, the first person, and then and then the second time they do it, they're talking about themselves in the third person, and the audience were asked to like and themselves and the audience were asked to kind of review the presentation, and they realized the people who were speaking, the people when they were speaking in third person, not only did they feel more confident, the audience thought the speech was better, and it's because you're doing this thing where you're kind of self-distancing.
Yeah.
So you kind of like, you're looking at yourself from a different perspective. And sometimes to do that, you need to kind of create something else. I know we've talked for a while, but you get what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
There's one more thing. So there's a thing called an imagined reality. If you ever read the book Sapiens, you know what I'm talking about. So it's when something isn't real, but because the masses agree it's real, it's essentially real. Compared to like, you know, there's a tree across the road and that's real, and that is a tree, compared to, oh, if I give this man a paper that has a 10 on it and the Queen's face, I can get some KA and some Snickers. That's an imagined reality, but because everyone believes in it, it works. So I think this is the same thing with here, where you have to sometimes imagine a reality to kind of explain reality. It's a really weird concept.
Yeah. No. I get where you're coming from. Yeah, it's interesting. I was gonna get into it earlier, but I'll bring it in briefly anyway. The whole, like, with my kind of crazy analogy at the beginning, right? Like, life imitates art, art imitates life. So obviously you had, like, we're getting very, you know, we bring you everything, don't we? Psychology, philosophy, we do it all. But anyway, obviously, you know, you had like Aristotle, who was like, you know, art obviously imitates life, and then you had like end of the 19th century. You know, that kind of turn of the century was when, you know, the realism, modernism shift happened, right? And you've got Oscar Wilde, obviously a very famous writer, and he was like, no, in fact, life imitates art. And what he was trying to say there is, like, I guess it's the artist's job to, like, make the viewer or whoever it is, like, aware of things that didn't exist before. So he's saying an artist will paint, a good example is like an artist will paint London and the smog, right? You've lived in London for all your life. You haven't really seen the smog before because it's just there. It's just present, right? But because the artist is kind of, you know, just painting in this particular way, you're seeing things that don't actually exist unless you see it through the eyes of the painter. So I think that's maybe something that we can kind of loosely draw to alter egos, right? Because they're kind of taking something from a different perspective and, bringing your attention to something that wouldn't otherwise be talked about. So we've obviously got some, some good examples for you today, but let's kind of start with some, some like cursory examples.
I mean, let's start with the most popular example. I mean, Derek Jackson was talking about himself in the third person all week.
I didn't want to bring this up.
I mean, like I said before, sometimes you need more, it boosts your confidence to talk about things you probably want.
Sometimes it gives you too much confidence. More confidence than one man should have. Let's not talk about him, come on.
Sorry, go on. Okay, go on. I'm playing. Go on.
Yeah. I mean, an obvious example is someone like Eminem, his kind of alter ego is Slim Shady. As far as we're aware, Marshall Mathers hasn't committed any horrendous murders, but through this character of Slim Shady, he kind of gets all of these ideas out. Eminem's a bit of a strange character because obviously, he has his fans and his haters, but he seems to kind of defer to like, no, it's the alter ego whenever he says something like pretty heinous. So it can be also something that you kind of hide behind. Because a lot of the examples we're probably going to talk about today are examples where the mask, the alter ego, the costume allows you to access other things. But obviously, it can also be a bit of a I don't know, invisibility cloak. Shout out Harry Potter.
He's calling it a cop out. God, he's calling it a cop out. But yeah, no, I get what you mean. But yeah, that's definitely something I'll definitely comment on later for sure. But yeah, I think another good example. Oh, let me just try and think of one now. I'm not trying to think. I mean, Nicki Minaj. Nicki Minaj has had quite a few alter egos, but I guess with her, it's just kind of I don't know if it's the same way Eminem does it. To be honest, I think sometimes she just likes to play different characters because she's such an animated individual. Obviously, I don't listen to a shit ton of Nicki Minaj, so I can't give you the full, story on that. But yeah, that's kind of how it seems to me. T.I. as well. He had an album called T.I. versus Tip, where exactly where T.I. is, this guy who's a businessman and he's a famous rapper. And, he's not about the streets, and obviously Tip is like, Atlanta's kingpin, which, you decide which one he is in 2021, but whatever, especially after those wild allegations, mate. But, so, I think there's definitely a lot of examples across, like, time. And we can get into why it doesn't really exist much today, but I think before that, I think we should go through, like, a couple main examples. Obviously, the clear one, if you're listening to this right now, that's just kind of just standing out so much, is Beyonce, right? We're talking about Sasha Fierce. Sorry. And I'm not sure when this one came about, but obviously she had the album I Am Sasha Fierce, so obviously I'm going to guess around that time. But she said it's something that's kind of always been there when she's like been performing on stage, and like, she kind of sees it as like only when she was on stage, especially like, bear in mind guys, it's like a good like 10, 12 years ago, so obviously not today. Beyonce's a whole different person. But at the time, like, especially Beyonce in the interview, she's proper dainty, doesn't do too much, proper quiet, like proper, like proper darling, right? And, very similar to today, she was on top of the pop world. Everyone loved her, like, do you know what I mean? Like, so I think there's a lot of scrutiny, especially back in those times, for you to kind of be a certain way. And I think she was very conscious of that. So,
no, I agree. I think it's funny you mentioned the interview and also the kind of costume Clark Kent thing you said before, because she had an interview with Oprah where she was talking about Sasha Fierce character. And this is kind of the post, where she played Etta James, right, in the movie. And obviously that was quite a confidence, kind of confidence building movie, I think, for her. But she said in the interview with Oprah that Sasha Fierce is kind of, she comes about when she gets the costume on, right? She's like, I put on like the stilettos and I'm kind of in that moment of like, the nerves are just suddenly kicking in. And then, I put on the outfit and I'm like, yeah, Sasha Fierce is here. so there's definitely like a process to it as well, like a very real process of like putting something on or I don't know, like repeating something. But yeah, it's like it's a very like physical thing as well, right?
Yeah, for real, 100%. Like, for example, when mean, that's the reason why people think people who wear glasses are like smarter, right? Because for some reason it kind of adds that air. And to the extent where Martin Luther King, you know, he was one of the greatest like public speakers of all time, wore non-prescriptive glasses to kind of get himself into that mode when he was speaking. So it's definitely a thing when like, oh, for example, like we attach clothes to like certain moods or outlooks. For example, you know, if you're feeling a certain way, it might inform like, okay, I'm gonna wear my nicer tracksuit, or I'm gonna wear these jeans or this skirt, or do you know what I mean? Like we do that because we want to kind of get the feeling that we would get onto the outfit. Like, do you know what I mean? There's a reason why we don't go to the nightclub in our bloody like lounges and like, you know, old top, because we're not gonna feel and present ourselves in the same way. And I think Beyonce felt a lot of that as well when she was doing Sasha Fierce. And I think this is a good example of someone. It's not because I think there's multiple ways to use alter egos. So obviously one way is that you're using that alter ego as a vehicle to kind of express an ideal.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes people use alter egos as a medium to be who they really want to be.
Yeah.
And I think Sasha Fierce was who Beyonce wanted to be but couldn't at the time.
Yeah.
To be honest. Yeah. Go on.
No, I'll let you finish your train of thought.
No, that was it. And I think over time you've kind of seen, right, like it took a while, but once it got to her self-titled album, it was like, oh, all right, it's not Sasha Fierce anymore, it's just Beyonce. And sometimes it's like the tricycle, right? Sometimes you need to have the training wheels before you're like, okay, actually, this is just me. Because, you know, fake it till you make it, in a sense. I mean, that's a good example of that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think, there's definitely an element of who she wanted to be, and then also who she was kind of becoming or was maybe not behind the scenes, but I think there's definitely an element of reality and an element of like projection of what she wants to be. So obviously, you know, the character's a lot more confident, a lot kind of more sensual, and like assertive. So, you know, there's songs like Diva where she's like, no, was it Diva is a female version of a hustler.
Yeah.
And then, you've got like Ego where there's like kind of a combination of like I
think If I Were a Boy was on that album, wasn't it? Yeah.
Like the kind of like Dangerously in Love version of her, and then also this kind of new like assertive. So it's like a good kind of combination of things. And obviously, like I feel like we can't mention Beyonce in this kind of like alter ego without kind of making a reference to like Lil' Kim and her like Queen Bee, who was obviously her alter ego back in the 90s. And she definitely like paved the way for a lot of the kind of like female rappers that we see currently, right? Because, you know, there's that like whole Nicki Minaj, Cardi B thing, but a lot of their kind of like personas and kind of stage stuff is definitely, you know, on the shoulders of Lil' Kim.
Yeah, no, for sure.
So yeah, I think there's two ways of looking at it. So we kind of talked about the way that like Sasha Fierce is who, you know, Beyonce wants to be, you know, she feels empowered by this. I guess another way of looking at it possibly would be like Sasha Fierce allows Beyonce to like do things, say things, act in a particular way that maybe, you know, kind of like particularly women of color like aren't necessarily allowed to do, or like that behavior isn't normally
100%.
condoned. So
no, 100%.
The perfect example being like Serena Williams, like she's been like just given such terrible like headlines, or just the way she's portrayed in the media, or like cartoons, caricatures of her as being like this overly aggressive, like masculine character female who's like muscly, but she shouldn't be because she's a woman. She should be like petite and feminine and things like that. And obviously this character allows Beyonce to be those types of stereotypical masculine, you know, behaviors. So I think this character definitely like unlocks things that she doesn't feel maybe capable of doing or of being.
Yeah. No, I think you hit the nail on the head there. Like, I think, especially this album came out, 2008? So, right, so, obviously, the world has obviously changed a lot within the last, like, 13 years or so. You got to think, when you're one of the biggest artists, not even just pop stars, one of the biggest artists on the planet, and one of the biggest artists the world has ever seen.
Yeah.
Like, do you know what I mean? Like, there's a certain way you feel like you have to carry yourself. 1, 2, she was still under her dad's management at the time, which, you know, look into that. You know what I mean? So like, there's this, at the time, I feel like she just kind of felt like, okay, I'm a pop star, and pop stars don't act like this, and the ones who do, like Britney Spears, get judged for it, and I don't want to be that person. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
and I think, so it's not, yeah. So I feel like sometimes it's like, okay, even though it's like a dumb decoy, but it makes sense, right? If I just create this character who I really want to be and what I really feel like, but no one's gonna judge me and critique me as if I'm that person. I think an example I kind of mentioned to you earlier. I don't know if I mentioned it on like the show. Like, for example, when we go and watch a film, right? If you go and watch like Avengers Endgame, no one's looking at Captain America and no guy is nudging you and being like, hey, that's actually Chris Evans. Like, no one's doing that. Do you know what I mean? Like, we just gonna say, okay, that's Captain America, that's Iron Man. Oh my god, that's Thanos. No one's like, no, that's actually CGI, mate. That's actually not him. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, no one does that. You just kind of like, okay, cool. And then obviously, if Captain America beats up some Russians in an elevator, no one's gonna be like, Chris Evans hates Russians. Like, no one even conceives that, right? It just doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. Even maybe if deep down when he's doing acting, he's like, yeah, fucking get it.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, even if he's doing that, yeah, you can't. There's no way to kind of get that rationally without people thinking you're mad. And I think it's the same with Sasha Fierce. So if someone said, oh my gosh, this Sasha Fierce girl, she must be stopped. Everyone's gonna look at you like, she's not real. Even though it is low key real, but because she's kind of done that projection, it's like you can't really judge it. And I think sometimes it's a good way to kind of, sometimes it's a good form of self expression for someone like Beyonce, because now you are allowed to kind of indulge in sounds and topics that maybe the media just wouldn't like you for.
Yeah.
But you're just kind of putting it under a character.
It's mad that is a thing though, right? That in order to do that, she has to create or feels she has to create a separate character. But obviously, after this album, she said she felt like she had outgrown Sasha, and she like didn't need her anymore. I mean, take that what you will, but I think Oprah asked her, does Sasha Fierce ever go home? And obviously she was, feeling a little bit bashful, and she was kind of like, "Oh, it's just sometimes on special occasions."
I mean, the joke is the reason why she didn't need Sasha Fierce anymore is because she became Sasha Fierce. I think she found that healthy medium where it's like, I'm still Beyonce, but I'm still allowed to have this, masculine sexual side to me. Like, I think it's the weirdest thing about Beyonce. And I think the reason why people like her way more now than they did before is because Beyonce never took pride in the fact that she was Beyonce. Like, that was just never a thing. She like, it's the way she kind of, made her songs. It was never like, I'm Beyonce. Like, now she's doing that, but before it just wasn't a thing. It was just kind of like, oh, it was just so humble, and she still is humble, but it's like very humble. I think it was only until it's like, what, fuck it. Like, I've made so much money now. Like, my legacy isn't determined by if I make some song. Like, even she made a song like WAP, right? And she didn't, but let's say she did. Even she got negative press from that. And back then, the press was everything. Yeah. It wasn't like Twitter or Instagram or anything like that to kind of turn things their own way or even get public opinion. It was just like whatever the magazine sold or whatever the news said, that was the truth, and there's not really much you can do about that. But I think now we're in an age where I think Beyonce came out 2013. Quote me on that. I'm not
self-titled.
I think that's 2013. So. Something like that. Yeah, 2013 was before Lemonade, so 2013. So so obviously at this time now, social media is a thing. There's she has her own brand, like. Obviously she's been established, but even way more established in terms of like self-ownership and stuff like that. So it's like, if I do this shit now, my legacy is already etched. It's been sharpied. Like, I'm good. So I think her being herself and essentially becoming Sasha Fierce has made people identify with her more. And now I think she's kind of like, okay, cool, I can be myself, and people are still gonna love me for it because it's more in her control.
Yeah. No,
That's it, really.
I agree. Yeah. Let's go on to kind of one of our two kind of big examples, I guess, that we'll talk about a little bit longer. So obviously we mentioned him a little bit earlier. He's probably one of the first characters you think of when you think of alter ego, right? Mr. Daniel Dumoulin. So it's impossible to talk about alter egos without talking about him. He has MF Doom, he has King Ghidorah, he has Victor Vaughn, Metal Fingers even. I guess Yeah, I feel like there's a bit of if we kind of put King Ghidorah, I won't talk about him too much. That's
Yeah.
obviously like the three-headed monster who's like one of the, like, I think it fights like Godzilla in one of the Godzilla
Yeah.
movies.
Yeah.
But yeah, if we kind of mainly focus on Victor Vaughn and MF Doom, so yeah, I guess like the time that Operation Doomsday came out in 1999 was an era, obviously, of like, you know, massive commercialization of like the internet. There was like the dot-com boom. You know, you have all like the hip hop and rap artists appearing on like Rolling Stone covers. There's like, was it RZA was on, RZA, sorry, was on. I always do this. RZA was on the Rolling Stones cover. You had like Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre. You had, what was it, Hip Hop Now, the top 50 players edition. Oh. And all this kind of like aesthetic and, you know, image was the kind of the thing kind of that became before your name. Like you mention your name, the first thing you think of is, you know, the image of them, right? And that's something that, you know, Daniel Dumoulin was like reacting against. So he wanted kind of like to maintain his anonymity with the mask. And obviously then it just took on like a life of its own. So like Doom is obviously a play on like Doctor Doom from like the Marvel comic books. I'd say, I feel like a good analogy is like he's the Daniel Day-Lewis of hip hop. Like he lives the character everywhere. Like you will not see him in an interview. Like he did a famous Red Bull interview. You won't see him on anywhere without the mask on. In fact, you'll probably see other people with the mask on that he's sent to perform because he's at home on his couch. And that's a whole other thing. But yeah, I guess this like MF Doom character, like the alter ego it's a number of things. It's like, it's mocking kind of rappers in the hip hop scene at the time, you know, the genre, what's like hot now, and then also it's kind of understanding in that and in reacting against what's hot right now. He knows he won't be appreciated. So it's kind of like a dual thing there. You know, you've got lines the way we talked about, like rap snitches telling all their business. Ones like that, he's just like, why are these guys talking about the crimes they're committing? This is ridiculous. Like you're supposed to keep that business private. And then you've got other songs, you know, like Accordion, where he's kind of acknowledging that people will never appreciate him until it's too late. I think the song starts off something like
Living on borrowed time,
the clock tick faster. That'd be the hour. They knock the sick blaster. Look at you, love that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I'm not going to quote too many, but like, I guess he had this alter ego. He wanted to protect his identity because he saw, you know, image aesthetic becoming way too important. And I find, I guess I kind of find, before I move on to Victor Vaughn, I'll let you jump in if you want to.
No, go.
Because I mean, there are three. What is it? He's got Operation Doomsday. There's obviously Mad Villainy. There's Food, and there is the 2009. Oh, I'm gonna forget it now. This is terrible. Another album, 2009.
The one with the Greek,
with
like,
the
kind
hieroglyphics.
Yeah. I can't remember the name now. That's so weird.
We'll have a Doom episode at some point. We'll talk about it. But yeah, I guess on the flip side of MF Doom is like the kind of like younger, kind of more playful, I guess a little bit more sexual and kind of like the jokes and innuendos as Victor Vaughn. So MF Doom kind of saw him as like he kind of flips between like saying, you know, he's kind of like a sophomore, and then saying like he's kind of 18, 19 years old. And he's kind of up to date on like what the new stuff, or like what the MCs are doing. So yeah, I guess he kind of like lives through these two characters in the sense of critiquing the scene at the moment and saying this is kind of silly, it should be this way, and then also kind of enjoying the scene through the kind of the character of Victor Vaughn, because Victor Vaughn like engages with everything, but I think the idea of him is that he is kind of from another era in time. He's kind of MF Doom but younger, but in the same kind of scenario of like early 2000s or whatever. So he's definitely more like playful. He's like a new sick story. I never met a chick too thick for me. So there's definitely like an element of like catharsis for Dumoulin, because he's like enjoying and like living out these things that an older man can't enjoy.
No, for sure.
So there's definitely like a yin and yang to his alter egos, which I think is so cool.
I think obviously if you know Doom's story as well, which is just crazy. Obviously, he was in a. Obviously, it's not like he always rapped under an alter ego, right? He was
Yeah.
with a group KMD, which were doing
Mm.
quite good. I think they had that one album. I mean, their second album got kind of shafted after his brother died. So his brother was part of the group. His brother died. It's called Black Bastards. I think it came out to the early 2000s. So I think obviously after he was signed, dropped. His brother Sub Rock, and obviously if you listen to Tribe Called Quest, I think it's what song is it? We Got the Jazz. And then obviously Q-Tip shouts him out, Sub Rock is in the house. Obviously, big artists, right? Tribe Called Quest at the height of their career. He dies, MF Doom kind of just goes underground. He actually ends up homeless after being dropped from the label. So I think after all that happened to you, and obviously who fuck knows what happened to him after that, because he was homeless, probably gone right through a lot of shit. Returns back to rap. Probably was hard for him to return back to music when that's something you did to your dead brother, right? So comes back in 1999. It's about 6 or so years later. Comes back in 1999. Operation Doomsday drops, and also I think after a while you're like, okay, I don't want to attack this in the same way, because if I do, and this is where alter egos come in. Because if I do, then I'm literally still the guy who was rapping with my brother, just without him.
Yeah.
I don't think I think maybe just for his own psychological well-being, he just had to just not be him, because who he was a member of a group with his brother, but who Doom is something completely new.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think obviously with him, because it's a lot easier, honestly, just outside of all of this, right? It's a lot easier for you to, and this is different to Sasha Fierce, where Sasha Fierce is you trying to that's like a bridge to who you want to be, and then you achieve that, and the alter ego's like thereby redundant. So with this, it's like you're using this as a vehicle to kind of express something you just wouldn't be able to in a regular day life. Like if I made an album just talking about like Marvel comics, like no one's gonna fucking listen to that, because it just doesn't make sense. Like I'm just gonna be like, oh yeah, I was just at home watching Spider-Man. Like it's not, it doesn't really make
some
sense.
like Scooby-Doo sounds.
That just under the banner of like Top of the D, it just doesn't really make sense. So I have to kind of make something where that would make sense. Obviously, if my alter ego is a Marvel character, and then I have all these Marvel skits, you're like, oh my gosh, that makes perfect sense. That's amazing. Like, but that's only because of that pretext. If you had Daniel DeMille, Operation Doomsday, you'd be like, what the fuck is this? Like, and a good example of why people just don't take it well, and it's proven in history, is the Outkast album Aliens, where they act as aliens, and obviously a lot of people were like, "What
this
the
is
fuck?
too left field." Like, I don't get this.
And then people like Southern play this kind of like music where it's like, okay, we were pimps, and we're just regular Atlanta rappers, and it's like, no, we're actually aliens, and we're talking as if we're aliens, and like people are like, nah, that's too weird. And obviously after that, they're going more horoscope based, with Aquemini. It's like, what the hell is this? And even though they one of the few that got away with it over time, a lot of people don't. So it's like with Doom, you kind of need something like that, because it doesn't make sense otherwise. Like you can't talk about. You just can't talk about certain things. Obviously, there's a lot of things he talks about which are regular, but you just can't talk about certain things as a regular person.
Yeah, 100%.
You kind of have to make music like a film. Like you just have to kind of assume it's like a movie. So when Doom's talking about all these things, and a lot of things in it, you don't have to. I know a lot of people, especially UK people, right? They love when artists are speaking the truth, no matter how heinous the things they're saying are. But it's such a badge of honor. Like when people know what you're saying is real. Like obviously Jay-Z gets away with this as well, Nipsey Hussle. Like there's people love that. People hook onto your every word. But now we're already in this realm where you can just assume anything I'm saying is untrue. You don't have to assume anything I'm saying is true. You just like what I'm saying. That's a whole different thing, and I think that's why it works with him. I mean, Victor Vaughn, a lot of people have said that that's the closest thing to him, but maybe that's because obviously the last time people saw Daniel DeMille was when he was younger, right? So I kind of get that, but obviously it allows him to kind of talk about things from a perspective that maybe someone of his age, or him being Doom, again, it's kind of like cascading, right? Because maybe stuff that Doom talks about, Victor Vaughn couldn't. Like he can't just be like, oh, MF Doom album, socially conscious, or talking about all that. It just would not work. It just doesn't work. Doesn't work. So you kind of, I think it's really intelligent. I think it's really hard to pull off. That's why a lot of people just don't really do it to the extent he
Because
has.
it takes
Because
so much
yeah,
studying.
yeah, because you literally have to create a universe for every alter ego.
Mhm.
Do you know what I mean? And that's not something people are just willing to
Yeah.
do like for several years at a
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, there's definitely
Yeah.
like that. Like you're saying, Victor Vaughan is kind of more of him. And yeah, I guess like MF being the, you know, the more like critical, the more like mature kind of, maybe not worried about his legacy, but definitely very aware that even from that, like those first couple of albums, knowing that whatever he produces just won't be appreciated enough. And then you've got like the carefree Victor Vaughan who doesn't talk about that and just kind of talks about his immediate surroundings and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, like even
Sure.
Doom kind of talking about being the best rapper and kind of shitting on these guys. And do you know what I mean? Like, obviously very, you know, villain-esque. Do you know what I mean? He does talk like a villain sometimes. It's like, it just, of course he's going to do that because like, it's like, yeah, like why not? But then that, maybe obviously who Daniel DeMille is in his real life, he doesn't always feel like he's the best rapper in the world. Doesn't always feel like a villain. Maybe he just feels like a regular guy. But he knows, okay, this alter ego does not serve that purpose. I gotta create another one. I've even looked into the whole fucking King Ghidorah shit, so I'm not even gonna get into that. That's just that is just a madness. But
question for
you.
Yeah,
no, go on.
Question for you. Do you think this, obviously a lot of Doom particularly is about like critiquing the landscape? Do you think it only works, that specifically only works because he would be seen as kind of you know, if he's showing his face and just calling himself Daniel Dumoulet and his whole vibe is like critiquing other artists, is that the only reason it works? Like you couldn't just have an artist who releases an album and kind of, you know, trashes the music scene.
I mean, a lot of artists, I mean, the huge part of rap and its foundations is talking about how much better you are than other people. I mean, the whole genre of battle rap still exists today because of that. So it's not like he couldn't. I think with Doom in particular, it's the skits. I think that's the main part why it wouldn't work. Like, also, you can talk about being better than all the other rappers, like, at a time, but I think, and obviously, there's a bit of shyness to it. Don't get me wrong. Like, there is, like, obviously, M. Huncho as well. Like, sometimes, like, you know, I've got personal stuff going on in my life. I don't really want to be famous. I don't really want all of that. Like, I'm a shy person. I don't want all of that. But, so yeah, definitely a bit of shyness to, in that regard. But, so I don't think it's a thing where if someone came at Doom, then he just wouldn't. I think it's like, it's not a thing where, oh, he's not being himself because he doesn't want people to kind of call him out for him critiquing artists, because people just call out Doom anyways. Do you know what I mean? You don't have to call out, because the thing is, we're talking about rap anyways, and rap is just a genre, it's entertainment, so you never have to. You would always call out the artist. If you're just calling out an artist, it's a real an artist. Do you know what I mean? If you say Gorillaz is shit, you're talking about Gorillaz. You're not talking about, you know, fuck is his name? Why did I just forget? Damon. You're not talking about Damon. Do you know what I mean? You're talking about Gorillaz. Yeah. So, yeah. So I don't think it's that. I just think it's more just he has a huge love for comics. Like some of those samples are old as fuck. Like
there's like a 58 or 56 Spider-Man comic show.
Yeah,
skit that he has in there. There's like Scooby Doo.
Yeah.
And if he's just himself, it doesn't work. Like it's not. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't cool at the time anyway, but like it's super not cool if it's just him. So that's why he has to, like, in the same way that when we talk about concept albums, we're like, you need to carry it through. I need to see the journey. Like this is him kind of like living the character, right?
Yeah, no, 100%. And the thing is, the way he kind of ties in all these like clips from the these comic shows and like makes it a coherent skit, and it kind of ties into the songs. It just, I mean, that there's a lot of brilliance to that, but just, again, if you're just being Daniel Dumoulet, that doesn't, because then now there's a lot more guesswork. It's like, oh, is he referring to himself as Doom, or like, but when you just call yourself Doom, it's like, oh yeah, cool. Oh, all these fake skits are about Doom. Okay, cool. Boom. Like, it's just, it all kind of makes sense there.
I think, but, just before we move on, like one last thing, the question I asked you, I guess I was trying to get at that because when you're like, critique, like he's on his own, like as someone who's completely shunning the light and appears everywhere with a mask, like he's not just critiquing Southern hip hop or like LA, like East or West Coast. He's critiquing everyone because everyone buys into that idea of image, right? So I think that's probably the only reason that the only way that it works is by having that mask.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Uh,
we
yeah.
could talk
kind
about
of.
it for days, but
Yeah. No.
yeah,
100%.
let's move
No.
on.
I'm gonna give it. I'm gonna give an example that's a bit more in between, bit more ambiguous. And obviously, that's Childish Gambino. And obviously, a lot of people be like, "Oh, but that's Donald Glover. We all know that to be Donald Glover."
Yeah.
And yes, that's true. But and obviously, I guess there's a slight difference between like a moniker. Like obviously, I go by Tops. Obviously, that's just a moniker, right? It's just a nickname. But honestly, same with Childish Gambino. He just searched up in a Wu-Tang name generator, and then poof, out comes Childish Gambino.
Yeah.
But I think with Donald Glover, I think what he's done with the Childish Gambino moniker, and I think the reason why he feels like he has to drop it is because he's another example of him using Childish Gambino to talk about something he wouldn't otherwise, but not because he couldn't, it's because I don't think he knows another way how. Do you know what I mean? So I'll give a quick example of this. So obviously, he comes out with his debut album, Camp, which a lot of it is about him, right? Most of it's about him. And then you get to the outro of it, and then he's kind of talking about this boy in the bus, and then obviously, you know what I mean? He's going to kind of build up to because of the internet. He's kind of talking about this boy in the bus who kind of, basically gets kind of shagged by a girl, and then, he never really grew up from that experience. He's still on the bus in a sense, and that leads to because the internet. And obviously, because the internet, just to give context for a lot of people, so coming into this album, Donald Glover wrote that famous, message on the napkin where he kind of pretty much poured his heart out, said, he's feeling shit, he had suicidal tendencies, talked about community, talked about scared of being alone, just a lot of his fears, right? And then at the time, it's just like the internet was just a meme bucket. Like no one, like all these threads that we have now, people pour out their feelings, everyone's so aware of like mental health. Like that shit was just not a thing. Like 2010, 2011, like that. Social media was just memes, and more memes. Even if we didn't have the name memes,
Don't
like
even
concrete
think
at
about
the time.
putting a think piece on your Instagram
like
story at that point.
like pouring your heart out on social media was just not a thing you did. Like it's just like no one would do that. But he did it on his Instagram, right? And it just went crazy. Everyone thought he was trying to kill himself. And then obviously he comes into because of the internet, and obviously he has this like. It's like a short movie. It's got like a script behind it. He's not Donald Glover throughout most of these songs. He's just called The Boy. So he's not even portraying himself. And obviously, a lot of the things The Boy is talking about, yes, it's in a fictional sense, like a movie, but a lot of the things are events that mirror stuff that Donald Glover went through. So in terms of like, fake friends, again, attempting to kill oneself, thinking about the meaning of life, meeting a girl that really understands you, not being able to settle down, all these things this character's talking about. It's like, yeah, okay, people look at that album, it's like, oh, okay, that's not Childish Gambino, but is it Childish Gambino? And it's like, you know what I mean? And you got that thing where it's like, I think Childish Gambino is not one of those guys who can just, and again, like, let's say he didn't use Childish Gambino, let's say it was just Donald Glover and he's just talking about himself, then it would just be like an L Sweatshirt thing when everyone just thinks you're depressed and everyone just thinks, fam, you're going through some shit. It would just end up coming off as like a diary entry, right? Oh, this guy has fake friends. He tried to kill himself. He contemplated the meaning of life. Found a girl, which was Janae Aiko at the time. Found Janae Aiko, really great girl and all that stuff. People were like, oh, no. It's like, it's very Frank Ocean-esque in a sense. I was like, no, I don't think he wanted to do that. I think he wanted to be able to express the things he was going through at the time, but not just make it like, some sort of like thought vomit on a track. He just wanted to be like, okay, let's make a film out of this. Let's I think he wanted to not only put out, I think he didn't want to not only put out what he's going through. I think he wanted to give people something to think about at the same time. So when you do it in that way, so obviously when you critique critiquing a person is very different to critiquing a movie, because when you critique a person, you're just focused on obviously the person. But when you're critiquing music and stuff like that, a lot of it is related to how it makes you feel.
Yeah, and I guess within that, like you mentioned, obviously Childish Gambino not being his name, and like The Boy and these types of different characters as well. Do you feel like, I guess, having these different characters allows you to like view yourself as well? Because when you just write an album in the first person, right, like your
Mhm.
everything's subjective. But do you feel like it's a better way of like dealing with this type of trauma or these feelings and like maybe taking like a more objective glance at it? Do you
Yeah,
think
one
that's
hundred
something that
percent.
it unlocks? Yeah.
And this is a practice that is used in therapies, right? They'll
Yeah.
be like, oh, talk to your younger self and things like that. So it is kind of a thing that's practiced, right? Where it's like, oh, if you could speak to yourself, and a lot of people do is like write a letter to your younger self, and obviously your younger self doesn't fucking exist, but you're kind of talking to yourself in a way that is outside of yourself. And I think I think that's exactly what he's trying to do here, where it's like I think maybe it might have been too much for him to just be like, this is me. It's like, fuck, like, do you know what I mean? Especially after an Instagram post, like,
Mm.
it's probably just too much for him to say this is him. So, I think you're 100% right about that. 100% right. And he even says, but then he has a line on the last track on Because the Internet, where it's like, where's the line between Donny G and Gambino? He hang with girls like Helena, but needed some time to re-up. So it's like, even he knows, it's like, yeah, like, he said something in the interview was so interesting, where he's like, I can't say that's not me because it came from me. So obviously it's me, but it's not me. And I
Yeah.
think obviously it sounds like he's just being on some hipster shit, but I get what he's saying. Like, obviously I created the art, so therefore, like, part of me is in the art because it came from my brain and I'm informing the art that's being produced. But at the same time, it's not that it's based in reality, so therefore it's not literally a direct reflection of the events in my life, things that happened in that time. And I think what's kind of helpful doing these things, because again, I think the things he was talking about wouldn't hit people in the same way if he was just talking about himself. He did it in a way where it's like, okay, but is this happening to you too? Are you going through similar things? Have you ever thought about things this way? And I think that's why it's so useful to do stuff like that. And I think maybe he's kind of done doing that now, where he wants to talk about himself like more
It's
explicitly. So it's like, yeah, he's kind of done with
yeah,
it.
because he kind of said that. What was it? 2018. He kind of announced that he was done with that moniker, right?
Yeah,
Um,
100%.
and we all know the multi-talented guy that he is.
Yeah.
Don't need to mention Atlanta and all the other kind of pursuits. But yeah, some great examples. Go on.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah. I mean, obviously, I was just gonna mention it's a bit petty, isn't it? Like, obviously, that last album, I didn't think it was an album, but it's really an album.
What was it called?
That's the 3:15:20. Fuck me, man. Like, I was thought, oh, that's some B sides. Obviously, only like two of the songs are like titles. I was like, oh yeah, okay, cool. That's definitely not an album. I wait for the last Gambino album. I was like, no, that was really the last Gambino album. I was like, fuck me. I was not happy about that. But whatever. But yeah, this was for that.
Yeah. Do you feel like we've done? Did we mention Gets?
Okay, cool. Let's do Gets.
Just briefly,
Yeah.
I guess
Yeah.
it's pretty. I mean, it's pretty typical. He just released, Conflict of Interest, and I guess a lot of the commentary and kind of reviews that I've seen maybe make a cursory reference to like the alter egos or like the pseudonyms that he has on there. But like obviously, he has Ghetto, which he kind of maybe like retired, but Ghetto's on this, and then he has Gets, and then he has Jay Clark, who's like himself.
Yeah.
And obviously that like conflict of interest seems to be that like the devil and angel thing, right? Like he's got the pull from one side, and he's got the good on the other side trying to pull him in the other direction. So yeah, like was that something you thought about when you kind of heard this album?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, if you kind of look at it in the sense of like Ghetto is like obviously the guy who was caught doing like car chases in year 9, or like 9 years old rather. Not even year 9, and 9 years old. Car chases at 9 years old, getting sent to prison and all that stuff. That's Ghetto, like raps in a really sporadic way, very like unhinged type of guy. And then obviously Gets is, as most crime MCs, more of a rapper, kind of mellowed out, but still a bit aggressive. And obviously Jay Clark is just
the Proud Family. That's him.
Yeah, Proud Family. The softer side, like the more, Honestly, I don't mean. Obviously, I know how guys are in it, so I'm gonna take this the wrong way. But obviously, the more feminine side of him is also the more in touch with his like emotions, and kind of be more introspective and stuff like that. Also, it's not a bad thing, but I think But I think Gets is more of a balance between the two, where it's like, okay, yeah, I can see my past and I've done all of that stuff, but I'm here now and I've matured. Whereas Jay Clark is maybe too more a bit much on the younger side, and obviously Gets is just more. Gets was just like all out, like aggressive, criminal kind of fully
Hop
indulgent
in and
of
hop
that
out.
lifestyle.
Yeah.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? So yeah, no, for sure. But also he said on Mozambique, where it was like, you take the fire of the young, the wisdom of the old, the power of now. That's a recipe for winning. And it's like, yeah, sometimes you do have to kind of maybe in ourselves, right? I think yeah, that's a good transition actually. You kind of got to see yourself in different ways to kind of achieve different things, right? Even the way we listen to music, right? So I was thinking about this. I was like, okay, so like, and I think about this with myself a lot of the time. Like, why is it that even though I've never shot someone in my whole life, never done any of those drillings, but when Freddie Gibbs talks about, leaving someone's thoughts on the paper, and I'm like, oh, and I'm probably geared up for that. But it's because when you listen to these things, and sometimes you kind of create an image of yourself. So sometimes, like with music, I'm not thinking of myself as who I am. I'm thinking of myself like I'm kind of like when I'm playing out the song in my head, maybe I'm thinking of myself as if I was that. And then I'm like, oh, that's actually a good picture. Like, that's actually interesting. Not that, oh, I've done that stuff I relate to and I enjoy it. Would you agree with that? Is that kind of how you take some music in sometimes?
I think so. Yeah, I think to an extent, because I feel like the natural progression would be to talk about like drill, like specifically, because obviously, I'm assuming the majority of people that listen to it enjoy it haven't specifically done the kind of crimes that are talked about in the songs. So yeah, I guess I do see it as like when you listen to those songs, you're probably trying to like inhabit the character in order to understand it, because otherwise it's just like it's a completely different life. Like you can't understand the reference points unless you try and take off your like regular day hat and then put on the like drill music hat, because otherwise it doesn't make sense. You have to kind of understand the context of it. Like, it's not all just gratuitous violence. Like there are contexts to a lot of these songs, and like societal issues, whatever. Like there's a whole background to it. So, yeah.
No, for sure. It's kind of like, what? It's like I'll give the analogy, right? So, well, obviously when you go to a club, right? And I think, we've all been there. There's going to the club under the influence and going to the club dead sober is two completely different nights out. Because when you're under influence, you're like, you're enjoying it. All those like little details, you're not really picking up on that. You're kind of like not taking things as seriously. So therefore, you're kind of, allowing that you're not letting that reality kick in. You're kind of letting it be what it is, and you're enjoying the night. Whereas when you're sober, because obviously there's no kind of like influence, your mind is kind of a lot more sharp. You're kind of seeing everything as it is. You're like, oh, there's vomit on the floor there. That person's really sloppy. Oh, the music's way too loud. I don't even like being here. Like, no one knows each other. Like, why are we just a bunch of people in this packed out room and the sweat's dripping from the roof? Like, it's just weird, isn't it? Like, if you think of it that way, of course,
stuck to the floor.
Yeah, exactly. When you think of it that way, of course you're never going to enjoy it, but you have to kind of not be yourself for that one moment to enjoy it. You got to kind of like, you can't put that, I'm just, you can't be John from your work in a club, because that's not the type of person that would be in a club, right? And I think I think another example, even outside of drill, right? I think a lot of people are so surprised. Well, not people that we would know, but I think definitely a lot more conservative people will be surprised as why like what by Megan and Cardi did so well, because obviously I'm pretty sure not all the women listening to that song, not all the women who enjoy songs like that engage with that type of stuff, or even are as like free with it.
Yeah.
But again, like we said, because in their head they can play with that fantasy, and like kind of be like, oh yeah, like, like, do you know what I mean? It's because there's something there to it, and I think that's why people engage with it. But then some people just don't get that. So like, oh, how could you endorse this? It's like, we know it's just a song, like it's not real, but like, do you know what I mean? We're not saying we're gonna get a bucket and a mop right tomorrow. Like that's not how it works. But it's just you just let yourself play with that imagination, because in a way, like there is that side to us, like and with anything. I'm not talking about just that, but like, in terms of like when someone's making more gritty music like Benny the Butcher,
Mm.
it's because it taps into a side of us that doesn't necessarily kind of express itself through everyday life. Do you know what I mean? So it's when you let that go at play, you're like, oh, okay, cool. And then obviously it goes away when it's done. I think it's the same for songs like that as well.
Yeah. No, I fully agree. That was a good point.
Mm.
And obviously, like, you know, Benny the Butcher, I don't like. He's not inhabiting a character like that.
Yeah, of
that
course,
seems
he's
to be his. You know, he said, what was it? No, it was West Side Gun, who was like, gunshots make me comfortable. Like that was one of his ad libs. You're like, oh, okay, right.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I feel like that kind of wraps us up for the alter ego episode. Yeah. Or I don't know. You look like you've got some more points to make.
Actually, I'll make one more. I'm trying to see how much time. How much time do we have left? How long are you running for?
An hour and a half.
Okay, cool. No, cool. I'll give like a couple minutes.
Go on.
So I think the last thing I wanted to talk about is because obviously you talk about alter egos for so long, right? So my question to you was like, okay, why do you feel like they are in decline? Because obviously a lot nowadays, right? We don't really see them nearly as often. So yeah, I just don't see them. A lot of people just kind of use their names, like, you know, Jermaine Cole, Kendrick Lamar, Aubrey Drake Graham. Like, people don't really. One, people don't even use alter egos, and two, people are just going by their regular names: Bryson Tiller, Brent Fires, like Leanne LaHavis. You know what I mean? Like, people just don't do it. So, why do you think that is? Why do you think it's just like people just don't really create a whole full another character these days? Not to the same degree.
I don't think it's. I mean, considering we've mentioned not that many like full on. Kind of like alter egos that have survived a particular album. Like, it's never been like really popular, and I don't think it ever will be popular. It's just that every now and then you'll get an artist who kind of appears and is like, you know what, I'm going to do this. So I mean, I don't think it's out of the question that someone in 5 years' time or someone in a couple of years could come along and just have this alter ego and like properly live it. But I just, I don't think it's ever been particularly popular. So I don't think, you're gonna see it. Do you think it's actually declined?
I feel like it was more of a thing back then, and I'm not saying I'm not saying that like the frequency was high, but I don't think I've heard of anyone who's come out in the last 10 years who's had an alter ego. Flying Lotus halfway counts. That's it, really. Like,
well, I mean, Nicki Minaj, what was it, 6 years ago? 7 years ago, she had her like, what was it, something versus Roman.
Yeah, but she's an artist that came out. I'm talking about an artist that's come out in the 10s.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like I don't know if I've seen one, but I know But I think you're right. I think the way I remodeled that question, because I do think you have a point. I think the way I remodeled that question is would it work in the current like social climate that we're in? Because obviously now, I think people take anything that is associated with you as you know, your God-given word, right? So would it even work in a day now where it's like, okay, let's say I'm talking about all these things, people would just be like, oh, that's him anyways. Like, he came from him, so it's definitely him. Like, do you think it would work?
I think if there's enough like substance to it, and if it like picks up on, if the point of the alter ego is to do a kind of doom thing or to kind of make fun of like a particular issue. I think if they pick something that people resonate with, whether it's, you know, obviously it was Image and like, you know, all the kind of like superficial, like jewelry or whatever it was, like the late 90s, early 2000s. Like today it would probably be, I don't know, maybe like an engagement with like social media or something that really like resonates today. So I think if they pick up on that and they do it well, then I don't see why not. But I'm not going to hedge my bets on it being like another. I mean, no one's going to do another Doom, but I don't. I'm not holding my breath.
No, fair. Cool. I think that's all I've got to say.
Yeah.
To be honest,
cool.
One. Yeah.
Well, yeah. That's our takes on alter egos. Obviously, you know, if you've been listening and you have one of your favorite artists and you know has an alter ego and we haven't mentioned them today.
Yeah.
Let us know about it. Tell us where we went wrong. Yeah, so obviously, you know, let us know your thoughts on the episodes. You can engage with us on Twitter, TVC Pod, on Instagram, Vinyl Collective Pod. If you're like, I'm listening to this on a streaming service, but I want to move over to YouTube, we've got you covered. If you want to get that YouTube premium for some reason, we're on there as well.
Subscribe on any like social media platform that you, or any not streaming social media, streaming platform that you use. Which doesn't really matter. I think you can leave comments on Apple Music, but whichever platform, just subscribe, whatever, give a rating. Give a rating of sorts. And also follow us on Spotify in particular, because we've got a lot of playlists there, including our podcast Shazams, which obviously, of course, very well maintained by John.
Very well maintained.
So we mentioned like some songs on the episode, it'll be there. And also, as per usual, we update our Now and Then playlist. We take a song from, song of the old, as Get said, the power of the young, the wisdom of the old, and the power of now, and we put that in the playlist. So mainly the first and the last one, but so I will start with this one. So my Now song. Oh, this one's going to be a bit harder, actually. So I'm going to give my Then song first. Actually, no. I'll give my Now song. Heart in the Tongue by Chance the Rapper. It's not on streaming services yet, but that is a banger. Obviously, we spoke about... I sent you that fucking skit. Guys, if you are watching this episode, or listening to this episode, rather, go on Chance the Rapper's YouTube. He has a video. It's called, 1-800 Stuntman, something like that.
It's 2010 vibes. It's like early YouTube.
No, don't give me the spoiler.
Right.
Just watch it. Just watch it, and you'll see why John does not believe in this guy. Fam. It's just this guy's on some every time. But anyway, Heart in the...
Oh yeah, no. So I'm giving away so many things. Right, move on.
But Heart in the Tongue by Chance the Rapper. I feel like that'll be on streaming services pretty soon, because pretty good song. So I'll add that. And then my Then song, so many Then songs, obviously still going through my 30 days. I'm going to do One Time by The Roots. I really like that song. I don't know why, but that song's just been in my head quite a lot. So
cool.
That'll be me.
Good selections.
I'm done, banging album. But what's your two?
My Now song is Looks by CJ Fly and Static Selector.
Ooh, okay. A little bit of pro error.
Yeah.
I like it.
Good song. My Then song, we've mentioned Victor Vaughan, so I think it is a great album. So I'm going to go for the song Saliva, which has one of the best beats on it. Interestingly, Victor Vaughan, vaudeville villain, that album, he outsources a lot of the production to actual producers. So there's a different vibe on that.
Okay.
It's like he spit on the mic, yuck, saliva. So many great lines from that song.
He always talks about spit on the mic. Obviously, on the last of Food, he's talking about vomit spit. It's like he's probably very very metaphorical with the microphone. Cool. See you next week, where we'll have special guests. Should be a banger. So see you then.